Thank you very much for this nice introduction. I'm happy to be here, and I think it's very good that I'm in the same block as Experiential AI, because I think our projects have a lot in common. So I'm going to talk about this exhibition, I'm Here to Learn, which we have shown last year in Frankfurt. I will introduce this institution very briefly for those who don't know it. So the Frankfurter Kunstverein is an art association focusing on contemporary art, dealing with current and future-oriented issues, presenting mostly young emerging artists, and promoting the exchange of art, culture, science, and social issues. And the visitors we have in Frankfurter Kunstverein are of diverse backgrounds. So there are a lot of people who are not very familiar with new technologies. And for those, these exhibitions about technology are a good chance to get in touch with these technologies. As an example, prior to the exhibition about AI, we had an exhibition about VR called Perception is Reality. And in this exhibition, the Frankfurter Kunstverein focused on how technology influences our perception. And with the exhibition I'm Here to Learn, we focused on the opposite, how machines perceive their environment. We had 15 international artists in our exhibition, and I will show a selection of these works and put them in relation to the idea of our exhibition. And I think a lot of the works are known by many here. Otherwise, it's also possible to read about them on the website of the Frankfurter Kunstverein. And one work is here in the exhibition, and I will talk about it later. So AI is technology dominated by specialized engineers, market interests, and increasingly privatized research. But this technology is influencing and altering numerous sections of our society and our daily life. So it makes sense to deal with this technology through a lot of different areas. And with this exhibition, we were investigating the role of art or the potentials of art to deal with these developments. I will talk shortly about the concept of this exhibition. The capabilities of perception and interpretation are two very important human qualities, and now they are transferred to machines via machine learning, which means that machines are not just registering their environment passively, but also interpreting it actively. And perception and interpretation are essential for the production and for the reception of art. So we think it's a good connection between art and AI, and this was our starting point for this exhibition. Some questions that might arise are what are differences in human and machine perception, and what notion of the world is stored or generated inside a machine, and how to deal with machines acting like persons, communicating values, but having no notion of their actions. And then how do the intelligent machines around us change our own perception and interpretation of the world? And when human and machine interpretations diverge, who decides or how will we decide together? In the first room, we had this work called Human Study Number 1, 3RNP, by Patrick Tresset. It consists of 3 drawing robots, and they demonstrate human-like behavior in producing a portrait of a person. So as a visitor, you could sit in front of them, and it took around 20 minutes. Then you get a portrait of yourself. And they consist of a few hardware components, and the software used edge detection and executes predefined rules. So the artist describes his machines as not intelligent. Nevertheless, when we have a look at them, we can get the feeling of intelligent or artistic acting. So we tend to see maybe more inside the machines than there's actually there. But however, it's complicated to get the right relation between our capabilities and the machine's capabilities. A lot of the current progress in AI belongs to machine learning based on large data sets. These data sets shape the interpretations of these neural nets. So we think it's very fruitful to deal with data sets through art. And we showed 2 works by the artist Trevor Paglen, in which he deals with data sets. So here we see his series called Adversarially Evolved Hallucination. So he used generative adversarial networks to produce them. And first he created his own data sets. And the categories he chose for his images are drawn from poetry, literature, psychoanalysis, and economics. And together with computer scientists from Stanford University, he generated these images to reflect the data sets. For example, the vampire to the right originated from a data set called Monsters of Capitalism, which includes images of classes like zombie, vampire, vampire squid, and octopus. Here are 2 stills from Paglen's video, Behold These Glorious Times. It shows the creation of data sets and also visualizes intermediate layers of image analysis. So when we look at this video, we can see that these data sets are shaped by us humans and, of course, reflect certain interests, assumptions, and values. And furthermore, it became visible that we contribute to these data sets. For example, through our online activity, through the content we upload, and the artist questions what values or artifacts of our culture we want to implement into neural nets. We had one room which was focusing on the detection and generation of faces and how this changes our behavior. I think this work is well known. It's by Adam Harvey called CV Dazzle, where he offers styling tips to avoid face detection by face detection algorithms. Within this, he also shows us what are the features of our face that are of importance for the algorithm, like a regular skin color, or the distance between ears and eyes, the relation between mouth and nose, and an overall symmetry. So with this, we see that these neural nets are very specialized. Though while training, they generalize their input data, and while classifying, they generalize as well. So very unusual and rare features are ignored and undetectable. So when we look at when we look at this image, we can see that there's a makeup on the face, but to a face detection algorithm, the whole face isn't visible anymore. So he also shows us that it's possible to mislead even sophisticated neural nets, which has become quite popular in recent times when people try to fool self-driving cars with stickers on the road or on road signs. That technologies have an impact on our behavior became also visible through the work False Positive by Esther Hovers. She deals with intelligent surveillance cameras, which analyze our behavior in public space. And so they not just film in us when we are in public space, they also analyze our behavior. And if our actions do not align to regular patterns, then these machines give an alarm. Mostly it's a false alarm. But nevertheless, if we know that machines have an eye on us in public space or even in private home, maybe we change our own behavior to produce the right interpretations in the machines. On the other hand, this work also deals with our own subjective assumptions that we have in our everyday life. So the aim is that we should find suspicious behavior in these images, and this is also a very subjective task for us to do. Furthermore, it shows us that we interact with these machines, and each is adjusting to the other. Here we have the work Probably Chelsea by Heather Dewey-Hagborg. She collaborated with Chelsea E. Manning, and she took the DNA by Chelsea E. Manning while Chelsea E. Manning was in prison, and there was no public photograph of her. And the artist used algorithmic phenotyping to realize this 30 different possible faces, which were printed in 3D. And this shows us that some algorithms, especially neural nets, have a large space of possibilities. And some speculative content comes out of them. And yeah, this is, so a lot of the neural nets produce predictions, probabilities, but not precise results. Nevertheless, the output became a part of our reality, and we deal with it as it is a precise result or a fact. So, for example, these techniques are used for criminal investigations. In contrast to this to this advanced algorithmic applications, we had this work by Yunchul Kim. It's called self-portrait.jpg. He took an image of himself and opened it as a text file. It was almost 60,000 characters long, and then he transcribed all these characters by hand on paper. And yeah, first it shows us, or it reminds us, that machines deal with abstract symbols and not with directly with the visual phenomena, for example. Furthermore, it can also remind us that we perceive our environment also in a coded form. And while we are criticizing neural nets as black boxes, our own brains are quite bigger black boxes. Next, we had several works who dealt with a tension between a concrete phenomenon and its possible meanings. This is essential for art, that we can produce maybe infinite meanings when we try to interpret a piece of art. And on the other hand, algorithms should reach final conclusions. Here we see two images of the work One and N Chairs by Fito Segreira. I will explain it briefly. In the foreground we have a camera. It zooms into a part of the chair, takes a picture. Then this picture is transmitted to an online service from Microsoft and translated into a textual description of its content. This may be a close-up of a door or a wooden seat sitting in a chair. Then this text is displayed on the right screen, and the text is also used to find an image which belongs to this content, and then this image is shown on the left screen. So while classification is commonly used to classify an object and to come to a finite result, this project is searching and creating endlessly new interpretations. So for example, it often includes things into the scene which aren't actually there, like a cat sitting on a chair. Here we see an image of the work The Thing That Isn't by Jerry Guy. He has made a machine which analyzes text and tries to get meaning out of the text. And in a never-ending process, it draws correlations between words and sentences, and yeah, tries to find an answer to what's the content of the text. But obviously, it doesn't lead to any conclusive interpretation. Next, we had this work by Nomi Jungdel. She took a photograph and translated it into words. So every object is represented by a word. And when we are close to the image, we can read the word and know what was behind it. And when we go back and see the whole image, then yeah, we can start to imagine the whole scene. Then we see a house surrounded by trees and some snow on the ground. So we need different distances to this object in order to make an appropriate interpretation. And furthermore, this interpretation is very subjective, so it depends on what I've experienced in my life, and it may be largely different what you see in this image. Then we had the video installation Flower by the artist Shin Jeong-bak, Kim Jong-un. First, they show characteristics of convolutional neural nets. So they analyze an image not as a whole, but in local areas. And the artists used images by flowers and deformed them. And then they send these images to an image recognition service by Google. And all of the images that are visible in this video work are rated with at least 90% confidence to show a flower. So now we may ask, is it an error? And if so, where is this error? And yeah, it leads us to the question, what shall we do when our interpretations diverge from the interpretations of the machines? This becomes more and more important, especially when machines deal with machines to make decisions. And of course, it's not always as visible what's the base of the interpretations, like here, this image of flowers. In opposite to this work, we had a work by Jake Elvis. He talked about it yesterday here. So I will make it very short. He uses an algorithm by Yahoo. Yahoo made it to delete explicit content from the image searches. And he used it in a reverse engineering to generate new pornographic material. And the video, it's 12 minutes long. It shows us pornographic material which is rated as more and more pornographic through this 12 minutes. And what I think is interesting about this work in relation to the work of the flowers, that we perceive our environment with our body, and depending on the subject, our environment may have a bodily reaction in us, but this does not apply for machines. So for machines, it's absolutely the same kind of sensing in this pornographic material and in the flowers. Then we had this work by Zach Blass and Jemima Wyman. It's actually here in the Open Codes exhibition, so you might have a look if you haven't seen it before. They use the story of the Microsoft's chatbot Tay. This chatbot was made to mimic human-like behavior, and people could chat with it through Twitter, and the chatbot should improve through that. But soon this chatbot started to produce misanthropic, homophobic, and racist expressions. And it became clear that it has neither an understanding of its output nor any ethical values as a base for its statements. And nevertheless, it comes with a Twitter account, it has a face, and it produces statements spread out to the world, and we have to deal with it somehow. So I will talk about potentials in 2 slides. The first is, I asked what are the potentials of art dealing with AI, and here are some potentials I think we have seen in this exhibition. So first, it's possible to experience AI through art. This is especially interesting for people who don't have access to the technology or are not familiar with it. And then, of course, we can reflect the technology outside of its functional purposes, outside of its daily usage. And sure, we can criticize it through art, but on the other hand, we can use the potential to create something new. Then, we can make the technology perceivable through art. So art works with central phenomena, and we have to turn it into something, so we have to turn the algorithms into something that we can see or feel somehow. And so hopefully this can sharpen our perception for this technology outside of the art as well. So we are surrounded by the algorithms, but obviously they are mostly invisible. And my hope is that through art we can develop some kind of sense to see them in real life. So I have another last slide, the potentials for further artistic creations. I was a little bit surprised when I've seen this slide in the presentation because it doesn't really belong to the exhibition. Nevertheless, I think it's interesting, so I'll present it. First of all, I think there's a lot of potential in continuation the works we've seen here in this show and also here in the Open Codes exhibition. Furthermore, I think it's also very good to deal with AI without explicitly using it. So, for example, this work by Zach Blass and Jemima Wyman, they reflecting on the technology, but they don't need to program for it, and it's sometimes easier to perceive these works. Then, of course, we could use other concepts of AI. So far, all of the works I have presented are based on machine learning with large data sets, but there are, of course, other concepts which may be used in, like, I forgot the name. Reinforcement learning, for example, or maybe findings from neuroscience are also very interesting to use for artistic practice. And yeah, of course, we could use the technology even more outside of its intended function, I guess. Then we could work with the relation between the abstraction and the concretization. How do we digitalize phenomena into data sets, and then while they are translated and manipulated through algorithms, new things may appear. And then maybe we can give more leeway to the technology through art. So I think for a lot of the works, the artist has a kind of a vision which you want to realize through this technology, but I think especially in art there's freedom to experience, to do some experiments with the technology and to see what's happening. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you a lot, Mattis. Are there any questions?
Again, I want to come back to the definition of art, and if in your case you maybe do a new algorithm to make from photos variations, but variations doesn't mean art. These are only a variation.
Yeah, sure. Are you referring to one of the works that I've shown, or is it a general question? General question. Yeah, so I won't give you a definition about art. So I think that's nevertheless a very interesting topic to find out how this technology may be used to produce art, and there are questions of the ownership and authorship, because all of the artworks are based on technology which was created by a lot of people. And so in the end, I think when we use this technology, it's some kind of tool, but we have to work on this tool. So we have to shape this tool until we can use it as an artistic tool. And this is definitely a part of the work to make this technology proper for our artistic creation. And but of course it depends. So if the work is interesting for you, if you can draw something out of it, then it's good for you. Otherwise, not.
So you also mentioned you have this previous exhibition about general as a human perception and connect. So, how do we perceive our world in comparison with machines? Then with the next exhibition, and I would say both of them have a very scientific background, because of course how humans perceive our world or colors, light, it's also something you need this scientist background to understand it. My question would be, do you think there's any difference, the public who goes to both exhibitions, if there are some ideas before entering kind of an exhibition with scientist background, if there's any difference between them both? Because AI, of course, it's a topic that probably most of us know. I mean, that's so much discussed in the social media, and we always get to know more about it. But on the other hand, it's also really difficult to understand it. So is there any difference for you, or have you seen a difference how public approaches to these two exhibitions?
Yeah. Though there's definitely one big difference between it, that in this VR exhibition, it's mostly about perception, so we don't need to know anything about the technology. We grab this VR glasses, put them on, and we can start to perceive the piece. And on the other hand, when we deal with this AI works, for a lot of them, we need to know at least a little bit about it. So often the process of creation is very important for the work, and it's a part of the work, though we need to know what has the artist done in order to make it. So we need to have both some knowledge about it and then the perception of the piece. And yeah, for people who weren't familiar with the technology, we had some information area in the entry to get them to know a little bit about it.
Are there any other questions? Okay, probably not. Thank you a lot again.